I'm going to bring this Sketchfab model into Second Life. You could bring this into other platforms as well using the same tools that I'll be using. When you extract the contents of the downloaded file, you ought to end up with these two folders here. The source is the model, and I'm just going to import that. This will require some preparation, but I want to show the reasons why I need to prepare it. So let's first go through the process. What I need to do is to map the bones to the target system, whether it's Unity or Unreal, or in this case, Second Life. So I need to go to my Visual Snap Mapper, and it presumes that we're using a Second Life target, but if we're not, you'd choose your target rig, and you'd use the custom setup, which is shown in a different video. But in this case, I'll just hit action, and it will generate a rig for me. Now you'll notice that the rig shows up very small here, so that's not convenient for us. So what I'm going to do is reset the stage, and I'm going to scale the rig down using a reference. And our reference is the standard Second Life Bento rig. And now you'll see a little tiny guy there. I want to turn on my move gizmo for some convenience. I'm going to get a front view here, and I'm going to shift click my other rig so that these two are selected. Then I'm going to isolate them, and then click my other rig, the Sketchfab rig, to select it, and I'll just scale this down, zoom in. I'll keep scaling until I'm close to the SL rig. And now I want to make sure that the pelvis bone of the Sketchfab rig is at the same height as the Second Life pelvis bone, which is right here. Now, this is a little tricky situation. If you scrub the timeline, it's going to mess up everything because this transforms in the animation. And I'm going to deselect, make sure I deselect my bones here so that it doesn't take up a lot of time. If your bones are selected, you see what I just did? So we don't want to do that. I'm going to back up. See, if the bones are selected in pose mode, it will take longer to scrub the timeline. So I don't want to do that. I'll go back into object mode, and I want to remove the object animation. And Bento Buddy has a tool for that. Character tools, clean motion, remove object animation. Now if I scrub my timeline, it won't mess it up. But unfortunately, I have the wrong animation associated with it, so I may need to reload this again. I can remove the Second Life reference rig now and choose my Sketchfab rig, and I want to go to the action area and choose a different animation. Now that animation is causing the object to change shape again. So there is the problem. So let's do this over and I'll show you how to fix this. I'm just going to select everything and delete it. And I'll make sure there's no transient animations laying around. So let's go down to motion processing, actions, and I'm just going to delete all my transient animations. And I'll re-import this here. And this time I'm going to apply the animation that we want to export with the model before I scale it, which seems to be the second one in the list here. And I can just go back, close that. Alright, let's go through that process one more time. Recreation, and add the save rig. Now I'm just going to see if there's a T-pose or a sort of T-pose here by selecting A, Alt R, Alt G. That looks good. Front viewport. Now did I create it yet? Yes, I did. Okay, so now I'll select Shift, click that, and isolate. I'll go back to this and do what I did before. Make sure that the pelvis is around the same height as the second life pelvis bone, and then I can delete that. Now I want to remove the object animation here. Okay. There is one more thing, although it looks good. Let's go start our retargeting and you'll see a little glitch that we can fix. So, action for the retargeter. I'm going to place a bone. So let's first hide the mesh. And I'll just place a thigh bone here. So I'll click this and click that and say map these bones. Okay, so that didn't give me a problem. That's interesting. So I guess I fixed this little glitch in the newer version of Bento Buddy, where if the rig is scaled, the mapped bone will be out of whack. But I guess I fixed that. But let's go see if the rig is in fact scaled. Reset the stage. Go over here, and yeah, it's very scaled. But we'll deal with that later if we need to. Anyway, so that's not a glitch. There's nothing to show there. So I will action again, and I'm going to start mapping these bones. Now there's a couple ways to do this. You don't shift and click to select two bones. Bento Buddy knows which bone is selected on each different rig, so you'll notice that these are highlighted a little differently. So Bento Buddy knows that those are selected on each different rig, so mapping these bones, we'll map those. Now I'm going to do these, and I'm going to show you a quicker way to get this done. I don't think we need any toe bones, but we'll put them there anyway for later use. This looks like a Mixamo rig. I could probably load a Mixamo map, but that won't teach you how to do this. Let's just do this. Okay, now for the arm, I know that there are 4 bones here. 1, 2, 3, 4. And we should count the arm bones here to see how many they have up to the wrist. doesn't look like it has any finger bones except the middle one. Let's show the mesh again. Yeah. So if we click this bone and move it, it shows that this is the wrist. So that's bone 1, 2, 3, and 4. So that maps out well. So let's do that. Let's click that, and then we'll click that, and we can chain this backwards, all 4 bones, by setting our chain limit to 4, and then say fill. And we can do that on both sides. This is a big time saver when you're doing all the fingers. And do that again. I select the end bone and fill. The spine usually has to be done bone by bone because so oftentimes we have to skip a bone. It looks like we'll have to do that here. But first let's identify the pelvis. That's usually the correct bone on both sides, but sometimes you have to skip one of these spine bones. So I'll just map these bones. I'll bring my mesh back so I can find the head. This is not the head. Let me bring this forward. Display in front, and this is going to be the head. So that's the head here, not this one here. That's the skull. You see this says M head, and map these bones. And the neck should probably work fine. And then possibly the chest is okay. Well, let's try this one here. I think that's the one we're going to use. Yeah. So this is going to be the chest bone here. We're going to skip that bone, and the converter will know what to do. It will automatically skip that. And then there's just the one more bone. Should work out well. Okay, it looks to me like this character is completely mapped. Unless there are eyeballs. Let's look. I don't see any eyeballs. Alright, I'm going to save this. I can reset the stage here. It won't ruin my mapping, and I can save the map. And I'm just going to call it fighter or something. What was it called? LP female fighter. I'll do that. Now if you save your Blender file, the map will save with it because it's on the rig. If you look at the object properties, you'll see the custom properties have all of this stuff here. That's the map. And I'll just do that now. A lot of people get confused with the idea of mapping bones. Another term might be retargeting, but I prefer to use the term retargeting when converting an animation from one engine to another. So this is mapping, and retargeting would be the process of turning that motion into one that can be recognized by the target system, and again in this case that's Second Life. And so we do have a retargeter to do that, but right now I'm going to just convert the mesh and bring this beast into Second Life, and this all the work is pretty much done. We just have to just say this again. We just have to use the character converter, and I'm going to show you how to turn this into an animesh. Then I'm going to show how to use it as an avatar. So what I want to do is enable make copy, because it will copy all of the items associated with a rig and then select them all ready for export. and once my conversion is complete and my export is complete, I can just delete that copy and I never ruin the original. So we haven't actually altered anything on this except bone groups. You see that there's blue and yellow. Yellow is unmapped and blue is mapped. So if I do this now, if I let's just play the animation a little. If I do a convert, it will happens relatively quick. The converted model is not animated, but we can bring the animation in to Second Life. So export mesh, and I'm going to put this in my ATIST. And once that's done exporting, I can just delete it. Just hit the delete key, and then we're back to our model again. Now I've exported the mesh. I haven't done anything. It's not ready for use as an avatar, but it will work just fine as an animesh. For an avatar, you may have to do a couple more things, maybe. I'm not certain about this particular model. It depends, but we'll try this, and I'll show how to prepare it for the existing animations in Second Life. You'll need a T-pose in case you want to go that route. It's always best to make your own animations, but this is in no way a T-pose right here. So we'll fix that afterwards. Let's just go have some fun and bring this in and animate it so we can see what we did. The first I will export this animation, and there are two ways to do this. I can use the retargeter, enable glue on the retargeter, or I can use bone control and snap to map section snap bones. And this is the same as using the retargeter with glue, except in this particular case I can just delete the rig when I'm done, but in the retargeter I will need to reset the retargeter because it's in a state right now, and now this is only good for animesh or custom rigs, very custom rigs where you're controlling all the animations. But if you're going to use existing animations in Second Life, you're going to have to do it. You're going to have to do without the glue, and you'll have to set a T-pose. I'll show how that's done a little later. So let's reset the stage. The first thing I'm going to do is go to Bone Control, snap the bones, and I'm going to export this animation. You'll see that the bones follow along with the rig. Now I know this looks awfully goofy here. You just have to learn to ignore this stuff that's not going to be used, and you can see right through the mesh where stuff is actually moving with the mapped bones, and the other stuff isn't really being used. It's just moving as part of the hierarchy. So don't get confused by that. I'll export this animation. Oh, hang on a second. There's a bone control. There is a feature I should probably enable by default, and that's called send to animation. What that does is send the frame range to the animation exporter, which I forgot to do. So I'll just delete that and do it again. That's all. Snap bones, and we're all set with that. Now I can go to the animation exporter, and you can see that the time is 13 seconds, 318 frames, and I can name this anything I want. I'll just say animation, and I want to do a priority of 3 for now. I'll set it to 4 in case I bring it in as an avatar, which is something we're going to do later. And I want to loop this animation. Now, the way it looks, it does look like it loops smoothly, but I always loop when I'm testing. So keep that in mind. If you're not going to loop, it's probably still a good idea to enable loop just during testing and export this. Now while that's red, it's still exporting, and when it's not red anymore, it's done. Let's go over to Second Life and see what we got. Again, I can just delete this. Here we go. Okay, here we go. Upload the model first. I'm just going to set this last one to 0 here, and this physics model. Include skin weights, and also include joint positions is going to be necessary. Try not to pay too much attention to what's going on in this view, because they're playing an animation that's incompatible with the pose. And if you're uploading a non-bipedal creature, that's certainly not going to look right in there. Now, like I said, I'm going to do an animesh. I'll upload the animation. I exported it as well. And I like to put my animation and script inside of an anchor. So I created a prim, and these these scripts come with Bento Buddy, and I'll toss my animation in there, and then I'm going to res my character. I'll shift click the box so that I can link them, making the box the root. Then I want to make sure I enable the animesh feature. And if I click this, it'll animate. Let's lift this up a little bit. And I'll make the box somewhat translucent so that we can see what's going on. Edit link, just choose the box. I'll take off that texture, and I like to use a light color here. Alright. So the animation represents what we saw in Blender. Now if we want to wear this as an avatar, we're going to need to, and only if we are going to use existing animations. Like you'll see my stick figure here is using Second Life's standard animations. Now a lot people are sometimes confused when I say this. They say, well, it doesn't look animated, it's not doing anything special. But regardless, you see that it's not in a T-pose. It's doing something. If your avatar is doing something, even a pose that's not a T-pose, it is in fact animated. And Second Life's standard animations are being used. So let's see if we can get this into Second Life and use Second Life's standard animations, and you'll see that it'll just look like you're standing around without an animation overrider. So the loop looks like it works fine there too. Alright, let's go prepare this to be an avatar instead of an animesh. Now if we want to utilize the animation that comes with our retargeted, remapped rig, we can do that. You just need to make sure that you have a frame of reference, which is the T-pose for Second Life. It's also necessary to have this reference T-pose when using your item as an avatar. So this will help us with both. And in order to do that, I want to create a reference rig, the Second Life rig, and I'm going to pose the bones in a similar fashion to this. Now, The biggest issue with this is usually the fingers, but since we only have the middle finger, that's not going to be much of a problem. And then I'll just T-pose the arms, put the legs together a little bit, and we should be okay. But let's start with something first. Start with a frame of reference that the rig is actually in, and I'm not sure it has one. So let's A to select all the bones, Alt R and Alt G, and it does have somewhat of a T-pose. Alright, so I'm going to key that pose where it is by moving all the other keys over one frame. Now Bento Buddy has a tool to allow you to do this, or you could just move them over and then key on one, but let's use Bento Buddy's tools this time, and that's called reference pose features. And since I know that this is where it's going to be, I'll just say, I can say reference from pose, but I know that this pose is already the resting pose. So first I want to create the reference. So now the first frame contains that. I'll remove that later after I pose this character into the new pose. I want to isolate this. What I've done is move these keys over. You know what? I'm gonna reset that because I think it makes more sense to show how to do it manually. So I'm gonna clear the I'm gonna remove this reference pose. It won't remove the first frame. It keeps the pose in it, but it does remove the fact that there was a reference pose set, because there's a little property that I put on the rig to indicate that. I want to see through this. The arms are a little goofy here. Alright, let's just start posing the arms first. What I want to do is go to frame 1. I want to put my reference pose on frame 1. The old reference pose is on frame 2, which is fine. I want to make sure I preserve that, and that's why it's still there, because the reference pose wasn't part of the animation before, but it is now. So on frame 1, I'll go into pose mode. I'll start adjusting my bones to match what's in Second Life. This is the reference for Second Life. Let's see through here, so we can see the other bones. You can see the bone here. Now let's see if we can do an X mirror. This doesn't usually work. Yeah, and that didn't work. Forget it. So we'll have to do both sides. It doesn't have to be exact. It should just be something that looks natural. We'll try that though. Let's try that. See if it works that way. We certainly don't want to bend the arm in a weird way, so yeah. Just try and mimic what's on the other side without getting too goofy. Alright, I want to bring the legs in a little bit too. If I go to the top view, I might have to adjust the arms. Yeah. think I want to bring those forward a little. Except for the fingers, you probably won't notice much of a difference. Or even if it's way off, unless it's the fingers, then because of the intricate motion associated with fingers, you tend to notice the defects more. But there's almost always defects. You just don't see them well. And this may be good enough. So I want to create a reference from this particular pose. So I will label reference from pose and create reference pose. And now I have the new pose we set, the original reference, and then the animation. So I'm going to, I don't have to play these. I can, let's see, I think the first frame here is frame 5. I think frame 5. So I can export from frame 5, but I absolutely need the I'm gonna put this on frame 1. Oh, that's not gonna work. I need to make sure all my bones are selected, and then I can select this here and move that to frame 1. Okay. I'd like to move this to frame 2. So the T pose is on frame 1, the original rest pose is on frame 2, and then it transitions into the other pose, the animation, which is on frame 5. So when I export my animation, I'm going to export it from frame 5. Everything else is dead airspace. We don't want that. We want it to start its we don't want to see this glitchy goofiness here happening. We want it to always be from frame 5 when we're looping. So this portion is done. I'm going to I have to reconvert this, and then I also have to export the animation to show that actually works in Second Life. So first thing is character converter, and it's going to export from this pose as far as I recall. I'm going to save this. Okay, let's just do the conversion and see what happens. Alright, and export, same name there. And it's done exporting, so I can delete that. But now I want to export the animation, and this time I want to export a relative animation, one that will work with existing characters, which are in the T pose that you see here. So that means I need to use the retargeter without glue, and I want to give it some distance here so I can see the retargeted armature behind it. So when I play my animation, it shows it following. So it looks fine. Now you keep that selected and you go to animation, and we're gonna use the start frame of 5 and a loop frame of 5, and export that. Once it's done exporting, always remember to reset the retargeter. So go back to character tools and reset the stage. Now let's go and see what it looks like in Second Life. Okay, I'm going to remove my stickman. I'm going to upload the new model. Now it should look better in the preview window after we enable joint positions, because we're in the proper pose. But again, recall that I said you shouldn't rely on this at all. I mean, as an example, this is way up and like that. And we probably will also be lifted. So I'm just going to wear this, right? And we should be in some sort of a, yeah, so we're in a natural second life pose here. And we'll bring in the animation. We'll play that with our avatar. So they both look fine. Now the textures are 2048. We can upload those. They'll upload. I don't know if it'll work. They don't upload as 2048. They're condensed to 1024s. Oops, but that's fine. They'll still look okay. And that's the normal map. Sometimes they there's multiple. I'll do it on my avatar. So let's see. This is the normal map. So go to the bump, drop that in. The texture is the albedo, and the shininess is the metallic. And there we have it. Have fun.